The David Knight Show, Monday, October 27th, 2025. In these excerpts, David, Travis, and Lance discuss President Trump's anger at Ontario Premier Doug Ford and his anti-tariff ad, which featured Ronald Reagan. For those that may be unaware, David suffered a stroke back in May. He's made a remarkable recovery and came back to the show a few months ago. Travis and Lance, whom we had only previously known as Whistler, were holding down the fort in the meantime. So, keeping this in mind, you will understand and forgive any speech impediments or errors.
The David Knight Show. As the clock strikes 13, it's Monday, the 27th of October, year of our Lord 2025. Well, over the weekend, we had Donald Trump decide that he's going to punish Canada for an ad. And again, it only underscores, as I tweeted out, how much this guy hates free speech. You disagree with him, he's going to shut you down, just like Ursula von der Leyen. And of course, he doesn't like debates. We saw that when he was running for president. He dodged them all. Don't want to have any questions about that. Well, he then moved to say that the ad was a lie, in the same way that Lala Harris's CBS interview, 60 Minutes, was supposedly a lie. It's not. And we're going to have a debate today between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. I wonder who will win. And we're also going to take a look. Soy Boy Bessent was on the Sunday talk shows, and he was asked about what is being done to the farmers. And of course, this guy said, I'm a soybean farmer myself. Yeah, the same way that Bill Gates is. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, Trump had another tariff tantrum. This time, this is the way he does his policy. It just shows that this is not about economics. This is not about even picking a particular industry and helping it to succeed by giving it protectionism, helping it to succeed temporarily, I should say. No, this is simply about his ego and his tantrums. And so he saw an ad he didn't like, and so he broke off negotiations with Canada, the people that give us all of our fentanyl. And so he said that this ad is fake. It says, it's not fake. His lies are fake. And so he broke it off and said 10% tariff. Just like he got angry with China a couple of weeks ago, and he jacked it up to 100%. But he had gotten angry with them once before and jacked it up to 140%. It's taco time again. Trump escalated his trade war with Canada Saturday, announcing a 10% hike on tariffs after blasting Ontario's anti-tariff ad campaign as fraudulent and accusing the U.S. neighbor of misusing Ronald Reagan's legacy. Did you realize that that is a crime in the U.S. Code? Well, no, actually it isn't. He just makes this stuff up because he's the dictator, right? The law comes out of his mouth, and so that's a crime right there. So he said Canada had been caught red-handed using selective audio and video of Reagan's 1987 radio address, an absolute lie. Trump is lying up one side and down the other, and he knows that his supporters will support him in that. Because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts, and because of this hostile act of, free speech, I am increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they are paying now. I guess that's one of the things that bothers me the most is his reflexive hatred of free speech, of its criticism of him. We've seen the same thing for Israel, and now this is him doing this as well. Don't criticize the state of Israel, or, we will do things to you, but take away the gravy train from the federal government, which I'm not in favor of the gravy train. Nevertheless, I'm not in favor of a petulant tyrant who capriciously and arbitrarily sets tariff rates and lowers them, raises them on a whim, and does it all because he can't handle speech. If you can't handle it, get out of the arena. You're a gladiator who whines whenever he's hit. It's just amazing. Get your shields up. Trump is nothing other than a North Korea-style tyrant who can't handle the criticism. And he can't and he won't debate. And again, at the bottom of this, who cares what Reagan said about tariffs? Is he the final standard on all this? Seems to me like the Constitution should be. But, this is an economic issue. What Trump does not want to have is a contest between him and Reagan, because then it shows that Trump is a rhino, a New York City Democrat, tax and spend Democrat who hates the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so that's the real issue. He doesn't want to be pitted against Reagan. So he lies about all this. This is the radio address to the nation on fair and free trade from Ronald Reagan. I'll read from it, and then I'll play you the commercial and see if you think that it was a misrepresentation. So he says that the Prime Minister of Japan will be visiting him at the White House the next week. It's important because we're going to take up our relations, and we've just had tariffs and other issues with Japan, and here's why. As perhaps you've heard, last week I placed new duties on some Japanese products, in response to Japan's inability to enforce their trade agreement with us on electronic devices called semiconductors. Now imposing such tariffs on trade barriers and restrictions of any kind are steps that I am loath to take. In a moment, I'll mention the sound economic reasons for this. Over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. But the Japanese semiconductors were a special case. So let me ask you, does he like tariffs? Does he think they're the best way to run the country's tax system? Again, unlike Trump, Reagan did not like taxes. And so what he's saying is, I don't like trade barriers. But the issue is that we had an agreement. And they violated this agreement on this specific thing. Trump's tariffs are not focused on any industry or any agreement. They're just weaponized against the world. He's just trying to pick fights with the entire world. So these tariffs were specific. They're targeted. It is not what Trump does. He says, but opposing these tariffs are just trying to deal with a particular problem, not begin a trade war, says Ronald Reagan. And yet, that is exactly what Trump is trying to do. Trump wants not just chaos in America. He wants global chaos. He is the number one Manchurian candidate for the globalist. So he says, we're doing this because we feel that both Japan and the U.S. have an obligation to promote the prosperity and economic development that only free trade can bring. So in other words, we impose these as a negotiating tactic because we want them to stop what we consider to be a violation of the agreement and unfair trade practices. We want to get back to a free trade agreement. That's what Ronald Reagan was saying, and Trump is saying just the opposite. The other thing that Trump is doing is he says, at the same time, he says, Reagan loved tariffs. He says that, and then later on he says, well, I wasn't fond of Reagan's tariff policies and his economic policies. I really liked Reagan. He's got to praise Reagan, just like the people when the cattleman talked to Trump, they've got to praise him and flatter him. But he comes right back at the cattleman and said, you're nothing. You didn't build that. I built it. He sounds exactly like Obama. You'd be nothing if it wasn't for me, he says to the cattleman. This is why I say Trump is a Democrat. He's a Clinton Democrat, complete with the accoutrements of Jeffrey Epstein. So Reagan goes on, he says, the message of free trade is one I conveyed to Canada's leaders a few weeks ago. It was warmly received there. Indeed, throughout the world, there is a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. It says, you see, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And on another occasion, and I've got this in the clip that I put together of Trump versus Reagan, on another occasion, he says, sheer demagoguery. Demagogue Trump. He says, and he'll come wrapping himself in the flag. And we've literally seen Trump literally wrap himself in the flag and kiss it. Well, you can kiss the Constitution goodbye with this guy. He finishes up by saying, he talks about how he believed that the Smoot-Hawley Tariffs Acts exacerbated the Depression. He said, in the memory of all this, because he was alive when that happened in the 1930s, all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. And then he attacks the Democrats in Congress, the Democrats like Trump, who want tariffs. So here is the debate, Reagan debating Trump.
I don't know, they cheated on a commercial. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, and they said he didn't. And I guess it was AI or something. They cheated badly. Canada got caught cheating on a commercial. Can you believe it? Yeah, they cheated on a commercial. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, and they said he didn't. And I guess it was AI or something. They cheated badly. Canada got
He did not love tariffs.
Can you believe it?
America does not fear free trade because the American people can produce and compete on a par with anybody in the world.
Frankly, Ronald Reagan. You remember, I didn't love I thought he was great. I loved his style, his attitude. He was a great cheerleader for for the country, but not great on the trade. I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but he was bad on trade. Very bad on trade.
But didn't he love tariffs?
Our peaceful trading partners are not our enemies.
This is the actual radio address.
We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag. The expansion of the international economy is not a foreign invasion. It is an American triumph, one we worked hard to achieve, and something central to our vision of a peaceful and prosperous world of freedom. After the Second World War, America led the way to dismantle trade barriers and create a world trading system that set the stage for decades of unparalleled economic growth. Yes, back in 1776, our founding fathers believed that free trade was worth fighting for, and we can celebrate their victory, because today, trade is at the core of the alliance that secure the peace and guarantee our freedom. It is the source of our prosperity and the path to an even brighter future for America. Until next week, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
But I can play dirtier than they can. Well, you know, it's a crooked ad. I heard he's airing it. Canada, that's why I pulled everything. Canada, they did a crooked ad. They know it was Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. What they
Make up your mind,
dishonest.
crook.
I heard they were pulling the ad. I didn't know they were putting it on a little bit more. They could have pulled it tonight. They're going to pull it Monday. Well, that's dirty playing, but I can play dirtier than they can.
We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our
Like
economy,
Trump.
our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag.
Yeah, little puppet. Who's pulling the strings, right? The little Pinocchio puppet that's there. They play dirty. I can play dirtier too. I'm going to throw some diaper stuff at them. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I'll play actual. This is the ad that Canada put together. And you look at it after I've told you what Reagan said, and you've seen the clips from his radio address. And you know what his policies were. And you know what Trump's policies are. Is this a dishonest ad?
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
And they're exactly right. As Reagan said, the founders understood that. You know, they talked about having peace and trade, not entangling alliances in Europe. We need to get out of NATO. We need to get out of these tariffs and sanctions that are destroying not only our economy and other economies, but it's also destroying the dollar system that has been their superpower. Their ability to be able to just conjure up dollar signs everywhere and pay for everything. They're destroying even that. It is whether it's planned or not, it is a suicide move. Even for Washington, it makes no sense. Trump said he's slapping an additional 10% tariff on Canada after the government of Ontario ran what he said was a fraudulent TV advertisement. Again, this is very much like his punishment for criticizing anti-Netanyahu speech. And it's also very much like his lawsuit against CBS 60 Minutes over the Lala Harris interview. And again, they put out the entire interview so that people could see that there was absolutely nothing there. Trump got a large settlement from them personally, millions or tens of millions of dollars, because the owner of CBS wanted to sell and because Trump was using the government in a corrupt way to hold up that sell so that he could coerce them into settling with him for his own personal benefit. He has done so many things in this, 9 months of office, that he ought to be genuinely impeached for. It would be a long, long rap sheet if you were to put this out. Yeah, they came against him with impeachment charges over nonsense. This time, these are all very substantive, very important things that he needs to be impeached for, beginning with corruption. The sole purpose, he said, of this fraud, he puts it in all upper cases, was Canada's hope that the U.S. Supreme Court will come to their rescue on tariffs. Well, he is the fraud, he is the liar, he is the tyrant. Because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts and this hostile act, are we talking about projection here? The person who's misrepresenting the facts, who can't make up his mind whether Reagan loved tariffs or was wrong on tariffs, and the person who just arbitrarily and capriciously slaps 10% on the entire country because he doesn't like an ad that was done locally in Ontario. He says, I'm increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they're paying now. A petulant tyrant. Exactly why we should not have one person make these decisions. That's not the system that the founders left us. And so as all of that is happening, you've got people falling in line to defend Trump. And as a matter of fact, I think this AI speech is basically it's not somebody talking with a Guy Fawkes mask on. They've animated the Guy Fawkes mask to match the speech. And you listen to this, and I'm absolutely certain this is done by some government bot for Trump.
They thought they could get away with it. They thought no one would notice. The government of Canada specifically...
You thought you could lie about what Reagan said, didn't you?
Reagan's voice, his image, and his words, and twisted them.
They
spliced together pieces of his 1987 address, turned it into an anti-tariff message, and broadcast it internationally, without permission from the Reagan Foundation or the Reagan family. That's not free speech.
They don't need that. It's public.
Propaganda. It was a deliberate attempt to manipulate public opinion, to undermine...
And doing this and using the Guy Fawkes mask is a deliberate, deceptive opinion. They are not anti-establishment. These are people that are the most establishment.
Operation aimed at the American people.
Yeah, this disgusts me. This is where we are. This is where the dishonest Trump administration is. They go out and say, well, let's be cool. Let's animate a Guy Fawkes mask and we'll look like we're anti-establishment. I read you the speech, parts of it, because, when you're going to do a 1-minute ad, you're going to have to edit it. And that ad was not edited deceptively. It made the points that Ronald Reagan was making. It didn't go into all the detail that he had about the negative effects of protectionism on war and global economy and our own economy. But it was very honest in terms of representing Ronald Reagan. And they keep falling back on that because, when you look at these guys, This is now what MAGA has turned into. This is a cartoon, Ronald Reagan at a coffee shop having a cup of coffee. And the red-hatted MAGA guys, and they look like a bunch of communists now that they've got their uniforms and their red hats, saying this is modern conservatism, where Reagan is a commie and Putin is the hero. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? So Reagan in the ad said that tariffs may seem patriotic, but ultimately they hurt every American worker and consumer and inevitably lead to retaliation from foreign trade partners. And again, he also said demagogues will wave the flag and wrap themselves in it while they're doing it. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute pushed back on this ad. And again, you can see the ad yourself. And there was a community notes on there saying, yes, this is honest. This is exactly the way that Reagan framed the debate. And yet, the Reagan Presidential Foundation Institution is just like the rest of the GOP. They've become fearful sycophants of this lying president. They've lost their principles. They have no spine. They've just become functionaries. The Reagan Presidential Library, no different from Mike Johnson and the little mouse people like him. The Reagan Foundation said the ad relied on selective audio of the ex-president. Anytime you edit something, you're going to have to necessarily cut things out. It still, does it change the meaning, or you just have to cut this down from a 10-minute speech to a 1-minute speech? It's ridiculous. Again, Trump set that precedent in that lawsuit with CBS 60 Minutes. And it's important when Trump does this stuff. It's not just that it's corrupt. It's not just that he weaponized the government so he could win a personal lawsuit. But he's lying, and he's set this precedent that, well, if you edit anything, even if we give you the full audio or video afterwards, then I'm still going to come after you because you did some editing. This is beyond ridiculous. This is a contempt for free speech, contempt for the free press, and fear of debate, which nobody embodies this more than Trump. I've never seen a presidential election since they started doing these debates where you had an incumbent dodge every single debate. And that's true of both Biden and Trump. These guys just can't debate. They had one with each other, but you can see why they would dodge it. All trade negotiations with Canada hereby terminated, all uppercase. The 10% tariff hike adds to the 35% broad tariff on most Canadian goods and industries like steel and auto parts, and that's going to hurt us as well. Again, people in America, we're not that vertically integrated that we have everything. You could say that's something we should aspire to. Okay, fine. Except that's not the reality. So you don't just cut everything off and then tell people to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So they already have a 25% tariff in place. And there is also a 10% tariff on Canadian lumber. So now this is just across the board in a tariff tantrum because he doesn't like the ad, because the ad was a bit too on the point and honest. I guess they could say that they were over the target. Trump has said that tariffs have been a key negotiating tool for him since returning to the White House earlier this year. Yeah, it's bringing chaos to the global economy. Because it's not just that he can't make up his mind. The way he's doing this as a negotiating tool is actually the dumbest aspect of his tariffs that there is. He'll be defended on that. Well, he's just using that as a negotiating tool, and then he pulls it off. Yeah, but the net result of that is to make even more chaos in every single industry, as I said about the farmers. They're complaining. They said, we need to have a stable environment. We need to know what the prices are going to be. And as I said last week, that's the entire reason why they created the Chicago Board of Trade. And he is single-handedly destroying all of that. Nobody knows what anything is going to be because it's all up for grabs and negotiations, and it's all a taco. So he always chickens out. He's spending and blowing the economic power that he has, just like Biden did. Yeah, Trump says they cheated on a commercial, and another person put this as Republicans against Trump. They cheated on a commercial. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, and they said he didn't. It was AI or something. They cheated badly. Canada got caught cheating on a commercial. And they said Trump is lying. The ad used is Reagan audio of him speaking against tariffs, and they have a link to it. But here's the issue. Even if they did a bad commercial, is that grounds for some dictator to arbitrarily impose these tariffs? No, it isn't. Just like the issue with the drug stuff. If those people were doing drugs, if they were transporting drugs, there is still no justification for killing them first without due process. There's not even a law that makes what they're being killed for doing. There's not even a law that says that that is a death penalty if you gave them due process. This is the way he operates. Now, this is what I said on Twitter. I said, the Trump tariff tantrum against Canada shows his contempt for free speech. The fact that he continually retaliates against countries using tariffs shows that this is not about economics and it's not about trade. It's about his tantrums. He won't or he can't debate, as we saw during his campaign. You're right, you shouldn't fear debate or have to resort to censorship if you're right. The ad was not deceptive. Trump's lies are deceptive. Ron Smith said, Trump says Canada cheated on the commercials and lies that Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. He says the original video of Ronald Reagan is probably AI. The man has overstayed his welcome. 25th Amendment time. Well, I don't think that he's incompetent mentally for the 25th Amendment, but I do think that he ought to be impeached over and over again. This guy is a criminal. He is the crimes that he's committed, quite frankly, are much worse than the crime of coming across the border. We should deport him. Round this guy up. Is far more consequential. And of course, he's keeping in place the programs that pay the people who come across the border as well. Trump says Reagan loved tariffs, and they used AI to make him, but they didn't. Let's not become immune to how easily and blatantly Trump lies. That's absolutely true. Well, again, I've said most of this. It was local government of the province of Ontario. And Trump got really upset about it because they continued to play the ad through the World Series. That's why he considered it to be a hostile act. Maybe he should ask himself why Canadians are booing American teams in hockey, for example. Why is that happening? That's never happened before him. Because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts, he said, and a hostile act. The tariffs are the hostile act. The misrepresentation of the facts are what Trump is saying. So again, it was Ontario Premier Doug Ford said that the ad campaign will be put on hold starting Monday so that trade talks can resume. He said, our intention was always to initiate a conversation about the kind of economy that Americans want to build and the impact of tariffs on workers and businesses. I guess we've achieved our goal, having reached U.S. audiences at the highest level. Again, the Streisand effect. Trump can't handle debates, right? You want the truth? He can't handle it. He can't handle the truth. Mr. Trump claimed that Ontario officials had indicated the ad was to be taken down immediately. And they didn't take it down immediately. They put it on during the World Series game. The president claimed Ontario's government allowed the ad to run on Friday during the World Series between the Toronto Blue Jays and the LA Dodgers, knowing that it was a fraud, he said. In an interview with Face the Nation on Sunday, Scott Bessent accused the province of Ontario of spending up to $75 million on the ads, calling it propaganda. You could say that about any political ad that you disagree with. You're going to call it propaganda, or you're going to call it hate speech, or you're going to call it false, or whatever. We've always had the situation where the answer to that is not censorship, but the answer is more debate. Over the summer, Trump hiked tariffs in the country to 38%, though a large share of goods are exempt because they're covered under Trump's own USMCA agreement. In March, Canada imposed 25% retaliatory tariffs on many U.S. products not covered by the USMCA. But in August, as part of the efforts to reach a deal on tariffs, Canadian Prime Minister Carney said those retaliation tariffs are being lifted. The two nations have yet to reach a deal. And so this is Bessent talking about the Canadian ad when he was asked about it on the Sunday show's Meet the Press he was on.
This week, President Trump abruptly broke off trade talks with Canada and put another 10% tariff on Canada in response to an ad that the government of Ontario ran. It features former President Ronald Reagan. Why is the president setting trade policy based on a television ad he doesn't like?
Exactly right.
Well, Kristen, let's think about this. This is a kind of propaganda against U.S. citizens.
It's speech.
It's psyops. Why would the government of Ontario? I'm told that they've spent
it's a psyop, huh?
Planning to spend up to $75 million on these ads that come across the U.S. border. So what was the purpose of that other than to sway public opinion? And, it's some kind of propaganda that the Premier of Ontario
it's actually true.
launched.
Will the 10% tariffs apply to all Canadian goods, Mr. Secretary?
Kristen, I've been traveling since this unfortunate event happened.
Kristen, I don't know, because this is all just in the mind of Trump.
We'll have to see, but
there's no debate. There's no discussion about this.
Terrible judgment.
He didn't ask me, the Treasury Secretary.
Who has a bit of a reputation for being a hothead.
No, that's some president, I guess, yeah. Why is the president setting trade policy based on a TV ad he doesn't like? Again, that kind of childish behavior. It really hurt his ego to have somebody show that Ronald Reagan thought he was a demagogue. Ronald Reagan described Donald Trump to a T 40 years ago. He knew exactly how this kind of tyranny would be coming to America. How dare them do a psyop against us, pitting Reagan against Trump? Well, it's not difficult to do. And it was true. And he just shows what a shill he is. Every time something happens, conservatives, MAGA conservatives, are always seeing George Soros everywhere. He's the Moriarty of the left, right? He's got his tentacles out there, just like Sherlock Holmes' nemesis. And every time, it's always Soros, Soros, Soros. Do you realize that this guy broke the Bank of England, Scott Bessent did, with George Soros, that he worked for George Soros, that he got involved in nefarious things, and that he is a liar, a scammer, and a Soros partner? And yet MAGA doesn't care. It's another example of the doublethink that they're capable of engaging in. They really can't put two and two together, or will not put it together when it's right in front of their face. So again, he doesn't know what's going to happen, because it's only, the whims of his president. Who knows? Trump is making this up as he goes along, is what he should say, right? And so, again, Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, said Trump. Such a liar. He just can't keep, most liars can't keep their stories straight. That's how they get caught, all right? So Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, and yet Ronald Reagan was wrong when he opposed tariffs. You're supposed to hold both of those contradictory statements true at the same time, and MAGA is great at doing that. They are the big problem. And then you got the guy who is actually advising him on this stuff, Peter Navarro, right? Who also, the trade advisor to Trump, repeatedly cited a fictional expert named Ron Vara, which is an anagram of his own last name, in his books, in order to support arguments for protectionist trade policies and tariffs. Who is Peter Navarro? That's right. He was a lifelong Democrat, like Trump, who had run for office. Unlike Trump, he failed multiple times. So Trump, the New York City Democrat, puts in Peter Navarro, the California Democrat, who loves protectionist tariffs, just like the Democrats of Ronald Reagan's day did, puts him in to craft the so-called reciprocal trade acts, which was the biggest bunch of nonsense equation you've ever seen in your life, though, coming up with these numbers that they came up with. He is dumber than a sack of bricks. So Peter Navarro, his expert.
Citing a person that doesn't exist named after yourself, That's a very Hunter S. Thompson sort of. We've got
very Trumpian thing.
We've got Gonzo world trade going on.
Well, yeah, Trump did that. Trump called.
There's someone saying it. Who? Well, I mean, it's me, but someone's saying it.
Trump called in to a radio station. They got the tape, where he's praising himself and saying that he's somebody else, and he's praising himself. It's exactly what Peter Navarro did. So the kind of birds of a feather, just like Trump and Epstein. So he's taking a victory lap because he said he's going to have an agreement with China. We'll see about that. And we had a lot of agreements, but again, they never last. Nobody can trust them to continue. We got some comments here, Travis.
Yes, we do. Steve Evans says, Trump has an ego? I know you wouldn't know it to look at him.
Yeah.
You got to observe him long and hard before you can really see it. Steve Evans says, the East Wing is gone, making room for the elite's ballroom. I didn't know the elites had balls.
Yeah.
Nibiru 20.
Yeah, I'm afraid.
Nibiru.
And again, I'm not saying that Reagan was right. And as you know, I have said in the past that if we're going to have taxes, I would rather have a tariff tax, which is like a sales tax, rather than an income tax. However, it needs to be stable. Can you imagine if the income tax rates were just fluctuating on a daily basis? How could anybody do business if all the taxes are constantly changing like that? The issue is the fact that Trump doesn't have a strategy. He doesn't have a number in mind. It is all subject to his whims and his arbitrary, capricious manipulation. And that is disastrous in and of itself. Not only that, but the tariff is a tax that has been added, not replacing the income tax. So all that argument was out the window. But, of course, the MAGA people still foolishly believe that the income tax is going to go away. It's not going to go away. He's telling them, I'm making those tax cuts permanent. Well, you can't make the tax cuts permanent if you don't make the income tax permanent. But they can't put one and one together. 2 + 2 = 5 for these people. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's also amazing that Trump is actually making the tariffs look much worse than they actually are, with his extremely inconsistent and random application of it without any direct targeting at a particular industry or product that could actually be manufactured in the U.S. as an alternative. If anything, I would say Reagan should have done more with the tariffs instead of the taxes that we have now. I think of all forms of taxation, tariffs are the optimal form. Like Jefferson, eliminated internal taxation to replace with tariffs. But as you said, the critical thing is it's still just a tax. He's just adding an additional tax.
That's right. And, as I said when all this stuff kicked off, I said Jefferson eliminated all internal taxes, and he could support the government that fit inside the Constitution just by having some import taxes. And then later on in the 1800s, you had protectionist tariffs that were targeted to particular industries that the federal government had determined they wanted to thrive. And again, I'm not for picking winners and losers by the government, but those were strategies. Trump's strategy is simply to use it to attack entire countries. He's not doing this in order to make enough revenue to get rid of the income tax. He's not doing this in order to imagine that he's going to protect a particular industry. He's hurting our own industries, and he's just using this as a weapon to slap people upside the face. That's all that's happening with us. Let's go ahead here.
Pezono Vante, 1776, says Trump is a New York, Marshall status, debt-loving, Fed-loving, military-industrial complex-loving Democrat.
Yep.
The real octo-spook. Reagan's tariffs did good for chips/computers/electronics made in America. Today, if made in America, they are unaffordable.
Yeah. Yeah, where is the semiconductor industry business today? Bye-bye. So tariffs did not save the, and that trade agreement did not save.
Guard Goldsmith. The other thing about Reagan's statement is that the Japanese push at that moment was on semiconductors, and their central planning ended up destroying the Japanese economy for years after.
That's right. That's right.
Guard Goldsmith. The Japanese banked on semiconductors. Then people found ways to make them incredibly cheaply, and the price plummeted, and the Japanese economy tanked.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Guard Goldsmith. I don't know if you all heard Bessent on NBC, but he was like a blind man in a forest totally out to lunch on the tariffs.
Yeah, he hasn't been told anything. I'll have to wait and see.
I'm updating my Truth Social.
I'm the Treasury Secretary, but the president doesn't ask me any questions about that. He just had a temper tantrum. That's what this is all about.
I'm sure we'll all find out at the same time. Guard
I was
Goldsmith.
traveling, and then when I looked, there was a 10% tariff on Canada. Who knows what's going on?
Guard Goldsmith. MAGA didn't like Biden plus pocketing cash via Ukraine or the Clintons making money at their foundations, yet they had no problem when Trump plus pals laughed about making cash off the April tariff stock market crash.
That's right. It's absolutely amazing what is happening, the grifting that's going on. And Trump Jr. and his drone company is called something unreal or unnatural drones or something like that. He's making a killing, and Trump, of course, will be using those products to make a literal killing. But
at least.
Yeah. Yep.
Guard Goldsmith. Bessent was propped up by Soros all along. The best of friends. The friends that short an economy together stay together. Nibiru 2029. Every pestilent since JFK has been using the same incremental script. I'm Marty. Oh my goodness, an invasion of Canadian commercials. Next thing you know, they'll be telling Americans, ask your doctor about fentanyl.
Oh, that's great. I love that comment there. Yeah. That's an invasion of commercials. I can't handle it. They're telling the truth about me. 10%, and we're going to stop talking to you.
So long as they're not playing those pro-suicide commercials down here. Hey, buddy, you look a little sick. Have you considered ending it all, eh? Cletus 555. Do girls under 13 get in free at Trump's new ballroom? Best not to ask these questions.
You know, healthimpact.com, Brian Shilhavi actually had up the pedo ballroom where he's talking about that and that very thing. So
we have a AI envisioning of what it might look like.
Oh, yeah, let's pull that up. Here we go. All right, here it is. The Epstein ballroom. Kids' rooms underground. There you go. That's the pedo ballroom right there.
Probably a little bit too close to reality.
That's right.
A little bit too close.
Hi. Thank you for watching The Bad Civil Servant on YouTube and North American House Hippo on Rumble. The only channels where you don't have to like and subscribe if you don't want to.